You're tuned in to Women in America, the podcast that dives deep into the issues shaping gender equality in the U.S. and beyond. Hosted by Pari and Eve, public health professionals by day, content creators by passion, we bring you expert insights, compelling stories, and actionable strategies to push the fight for equality forward. On this episode of Women in America, we explore the new front line in the fight for democracy, the internet. Let's dive in. Ari, why is the President of the United States creating AI videos of himself as a rock star in red, white, and blue?
You could have honestly just asked me, Pari, why is the president? And I would have been like, girl, absolutely agree.
Dot,
True.
dot, dot. Why is the president? Dot, dot, dot.
I actually just saw the video that you're talking about a few minutes ago.
Uh-huh.
I had to verify whether, in fact, that was an official White House tweet. Because I was like, this can't be real. I mean, like, I already believe that whoever is running that account is definitely sociopathic.
Yes.
But they posted, and I think it was like several minutes long, an AI video of Trump. Basically, I think they were attempting to make him seem like Bruce Springsteen because Bruce Springsteen recently performed and at the start of his concert spent 5 minutes talking about how Trump is destroying America, right? And I was like, the only thing this video does to me is show how absolutely jealous you are. Like, truly,
it was also like
is.
bad AI. He looked like a bobblehead doll.
Yeah, but I don't think they care. Like,
they don't care.
Yeah.
Was it what is it, the White House account or
yes,
himself? The White House account.
It was the official White House account.
Okay, that actually doesn't surprise me because that's the same account that did the deportation ASMR.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
Which was the most disgusting thing I've seen come out of any like American representative social media account ever.
Yeah. I mean, I should say I saw the White House Twitter account post it. It's possible that Trump also posted it on Truth Social, which I call Timu Twitter. So, yeah. But who knows? I mean, I think that people have a hard time, myself included, sometimes discerning what is AI and what is real life. You know, like AI is getting a little too sophisticated these days. Yeah. But that video, there was no difficulty.
That was very obviously not him.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't AI, I would have called it bad Photoshop because that was like precursor to AI, you know?
I mean, he has a full head of hair. That alone should be enough.
First of all, that part. First of all.
He also has muscles in that video, so, you know. He's still about as orange as he is in real life, though. So they nailed that part.
I think AI can't even trick itself into making that normal.
Speaking of AI, actually, and speaking of Twitter, I believe that Twitter's AI is called Grok.
Yes.
And recently, I think a few weeks ago, Grok was like responding to posts where people were asking it about Nazi policies in a way that suggested that it did not believe that Nazism had ever existed. And apparently today, Grok, okay, this is going to show how little I know about AI, right? So I might not be using the right terms for people who are actually in industry, but Grok, the AI, learned since then and has now admitted that the reason why it was saying those things before was because it was being messed with. And there was news today suggesting that Elon Musk is attempting to manipulate his AI to say certain things.
So was the Grok telling on itself, on its own creator?
Yes. Yeah, which I don't know if I don't believe you spend any time on Twitter, which is great.
No, that's good. Out of principle. No.
Neither do I. I just see screenshots of it on other apps.
Yeah.
But
like an adult, you see screenshots of Twitter posts on Instagram, like a true millennial.
Yeah. Well, or on Threads or Blue Sky, whatever it is. But yeah. Okay. And my understanding is that apparently Grok has done this before. Like Grok has disagreed with things that its own creator is saying because it's learning on its own. And so I wanted to point that out because first of all, I think it's scary that you can or can even attempt to manipulate an AI, right? Because the
Mhm.
intelligence is, even to start with, artificial,
Mhm.
and it's written in a way that I believe it's consuming a bunch of information and like determining what it stands for or believes in, if an AI can even believe in something based on that information intake. So the fact that someone is trying to manipulate that is a little bit scary to me, but it is like really indicative of everything that you and I and other creators have been experiencing in the last several years, which is that these social media platforms are being manipulated, are
Mhm.
being altered, right? And I don't know if we even understand like the full breadth to which that is happening. Um, and you and I were recently at Trending Up, which for folks listening is a conference for creators that are either already involved or interested in getting involved in advocacy. And it is organized by folks who are considered progressive. So obviously there's like a certain lens through which we are receiving information. And we got to see the wonderful Pete Buttigieg.
Woo, Secretary Pete.
Yeah, in fact, actually, Eve and I were 10 feet away from him,
It was
and
crazy.
it was a good time. And he came out on stage and he was like, "Thanks for having me." And I said way too loudly, "I will have you anytime." So, but
Did he hear you?
I don't know. Probably not. And if he did, he's so graceful that he probably wouldn't have even acknowledged it. Um, but anyway, so my thirst for a normal president aside,
Mhm.
um, one of the things he was telling us, right, was about how he teaches now at the University of Chicago. And one of the things that he learned from his students is that none of them receive their news information or information period from mainstream media anymore.
Mhm.
And I don't find that shocking because we know that to be true, but it is incredible to hear that not even one, like not even a single person
Mhm.
in his entire class is not just relying on mainstream media, but not even verifying with
Mhm.
mainstream media, right? And I tied that together to what I was saying about AI is because it's so wild to think like if these platforms are being manipulated and altered by the right, which they are, we have multiple points of proof around that, then what is it that people are actually going to be receiving now and in the future in terms of their information?
Mhm.
And what is the role that creators like us play in that situation as well?
Yeah. And to be clear, by saying that, he was implying that all of his students get their news from social media,
Yes.
and creators like you and me and our friends who are creators, that is their main news source.
Yeah.
That is a lot of trust to put in social media personalities. I mean, you and I put a lot of time into researching what we're talking about. So do, I would say all of the creators that we're friends with,
Mm-hmm.
but not everybody does,
Mm.
especially not everyone who is getting funded big bucks by conservative PACs, you know?
Yeah, I actually think that the transition from mainstream media to digital media is natural. It's organic, it's happening not just amongst students, but I think folks of all ages. I think the only demographic group that is not yet transitioning that hard into social media is age 60 and above, I believe. But if you look at mainstream media, especially on the left, CNN, NBC, CBS, all of them, their viewership is either decreasing or stagnating, right? I believe the only mainstream media channel that is still receiving new viewers somehow is Fox,
Hmm.
which is so interesting given that we are right now saying that even in non-traditional media, the right is way better infrastructure, way better funded than all of us are, right?
Mhm.
And we have seen that as information and media consumption are shifting to the internet, the prevalence of far right figures on and organizations on the internet has increased at a very alarming rate,
Mhm.
which means that they are very well funded. And you and I were pretty involved with election-based advocacy. And one of the largest things that came out of all of this post-election analysis is like, every time one candidate loses, that side does a whole bunch of analysis to be like, what went wrong?
Hmm.
And I always find that amusing because all of these pundits, somehow the day before the election, they don't know what's going on and they claim that it's going to go a certain way. And then the next day, they're like, we knew that this would be the case after all. But anyway, I digress on that part. But one of the biggest pieces of information that has come out of the post-election analysis is like the fight for elections is more and more happening online, right? And so I think you and I have grappled with our own like challenges about like, okay, how do we advocate for candidates, for platforms, for parties when you only align with them to a certain extent or
Right.
only believe in them in a certain way. But I think it's really worth talking about the difference between our experience as creators online versus like the right's experience as creators online.
Yeah. I mean, having not been a creator on the right, we can only know what we read and heard
Yeah.
from testimonies, but we do know that during the election that several conservative creators were paid by Russia,
Mm-hmm.
right? We do know that they have very coordinated messaging, that there are large political action committees that paid social media influencers, creators, people who weren't just into politics, but were all over like cosmetic, clothing, travel influencer spaces. Like they were micro dosing Trump campaign material through all sorts of topics that you peruse when you're on social media, which was a fairly different approach than what the Democratic side did, which was primarily coordinating, if you can call it that, people who were already kind of focused in political spaces, which then did not reach the majority of the American voting bloc.
Yeah. I mean, you touched on two things, right? First, you said money, which is like a huge thing. And then you said strategy.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but we, as in the royal we, the left, doesn't have either of those,
Right.
right? And the right does. I mean, just like quick overview, these are some of the biggest players on the right in terms of like the funders who are sourcing the loudest voices that you hear online. Like the Wilkes brothers are two billionaires from Texas. They accumulated their wealth through fracking, and they have now donated, I think, upwards of like $10 million to certain conservative outlets. They like PragerU, which is like an online, it's supposed to be like an online university thing, but it's basically just like conservative videos being pumped out, right? And they've even started PragerU Kids, which is like conservative propaganda for children.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
And then they do that for like I don't know how many millions of dollars. But then they are also the main funders of the Daily Wire, which is a far right online media outlet, right? And the Daily Wire is the outlet that features the voices like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens, Matt Walsh, Jordan Peterson, basically all of the people that have not just like created and perpetuated, but like truly institutionalized the red pill movement.
Hmm.
Like they create far-reaching, like homophobic, transphobic, honestly, outright authoritarian content.
Hmm.
And they are being paid, like not just being paid per post, but they are being sponsored as their whole career to do this, to be like the face of these issues, right? And the influence that they have is not just in terms of swaying opinion, they are also swaying policy. Like Matt Walsh, he actually played a huge role in the passing of the HB1 bill in Florida, which is the bill that bans gender affirming healthcare for those under 18. And like he had a huge role in that. Like he's not just out there being like, "Hey, so here's what I think." No, it's like they have little arms and everything. And the audiences that these people are receiving not only rival, they trump anything that is happening on the left, like be it mainstream or digital, right? Like on TikTok, especially since January 19th, when the app went dark for a bit and then suddenly came back online, Charlie Kirk receives 60 million views a day. Like
Hmm.
And at the same time, you and I are hearing from our friends who have millions of followers, but they are left-leaning creators, that their views have completely tanked. So it's truly amazing, but there are so many different sources. Like the Koch brothers are another billionaire duo that are like funding a whole bunch of right-wing organizations. They've campaigned on behalf of a bunch of right-wing candidates. Are they are investing in the Atlantic. They're investing in all sorts of like ally magazines and
Hmm.
organizations to basically create this like ecosystem. And I'm not exaggerating. Within the industry, I learned this recently. The organizations that are funded by the Koch brothers are literally referred to as the coctopus because there's so many of them. Like they have arms everywhere, and like they put. I wrote it down because I needed to remember. They put $83 million dollars into the Heritage Foundation, which, if folks are unfamiliar, is the same group that came up with Project 2025. They've put 650 million into purchasing Time Inc., which is the people who run Time Magazine, but also Fortune Magazine, People Magazine, Sports Illustrated Magazine, Essence Magazine. Like, I'm bringing this up to say that we are not even understanding the ways in which our media is being distorted. And it's going to reach a point where people are not able to tell because that's just how normalized it is. And my theory is really that if the left does not start to resource creators and media infrastructure similarly, we are very unlikely to win an election in the future again.
Yeah, and I think if we want to make this more tangible to folks listening, I would say that what you see in your feed when you sign on your social media app is like a very curated version, is a
Mm,
very small percentage, proportion, and very curated version of all of the information that's out there online because AI has been used to understand everything that you're interested in to a point where things are so tailored, like you will stop seeing things that you disagree with after it understands like what your political leanings are, what your social leanings are, all of those things. You can break out of it if you start actively searching for things that are kind of like outside of your normal interests. But the algorithms are very powerful. And
yeah.
the news that you're receiving through these channels is not all the news that's out there. It's things that you've curated for yourself and that AI has understood you will agree with because it will keep you on the app longer. That is the
Mm.
whole goal of these platforms is to keep you scrolling. So if it shows you things that you don't want to see, that's bad marketing for the platform itself. So they're doing it in their own self-interest.
It's also worth noting that, like, I'm talking about the left as a whole, which in itself is a wrong thing to do because, like, the Democrats, for example, are not considered the real left, right? And, like, even the mainstream media that is considered left in quotation marks is no longer left. Like, if you do an analysis of CNN's media lean before the election and after the election, they have actually become more centrist in their strategy, and it's very intentional because they feel like they need to be able to speak to a certain population. And ultimately, let's all not be naive about this. It is about profitability over anything else, right?
Mhm.
But I think that it is scary to me to see both as just an observer and then also as a creator myself how the media landscape has shifted so drastically where even if you are someone who is like speaking to audiences in a compelling way, even if you are someone who's presenting information that is sound, that is grounded in evidence, that is based in actual fact, even if you are someone who is actually taking the time to verify all of the sources that you're sharing, you will actually never be able to compete with a sensationalized, super well funded,
Mhm.
extremely established infrastructure situation off the right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then to add to that, it's not just the creators that are actually being funded, it's the platforms themselves. Like the
Mhm.
platforms are being altered and manipulated, and whether it's algorithms or suppression or whatever it is super interesting to note that there are just so many changes that are happening.
We had a friend in a group chat today who commented about how they were talking about IVF and that their post like completely bombed.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, because you dared to talk about women's issues. How dare you?
It is hard for us sometimes when we see like content that's really doing well and people are not able to sort of understand like what subliminal message that content is sending them. For example, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen trad wife content online. And if you're not familiar with that term, trad wife means like traditional wife, and it refers to content that really uh, encourages very traditional and fixed gender roles, typically featuring a woman who's a stay-at-home mother and is doing very domestic oriented tasks. And there's like so much beauty in being a stay-at-home mom if that's a choice that you've made, right? There's a lot of beauty in being able to have the freedom to do that and being able to afford that lifestyle. It's a wonderful thing. The issue comes up when trad wife content online is being used to push ideals that are directly antithetical to feminism, right? And I say this, and maybe I should explain this better because in my head I'm like, this is so obvious, but I don't think it is because I spend too much time ruminating on this stuff in my free time. But basically, what I'm saying is, if you've made a choice to do that, that's great. That's what makes it a beautiful thing. If you are able to live a fulfilling, rewarding life because that's something you want to do as a woman, that's wonderful. Feminism is a thing that has allowed women to do that and to make that choice, right? And instead of celebrating feminism for doing that, that kind of content vilifies feminism. It says like, "Oh, I want to do this because I don't believe in feminism." And it's like, okay, but like the only reason you're even able to wear pants while you're cooking in the kitchen is because of feminism. Because Eve's and I's subject area is reproductive health, and that's something like we really are fine-tuned into all the time. We notice that like the trad wife content online is often also tied to like the anti-contraception movement online and like the anti-equal wage movement online. And somehow it's the same people that are advocating for stay at home are also not fighting for paid maternity leave, and they're also not fighting for paid childcare. And so, it's just curious to us that the ways in which messages are being delivered are very intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel like the left's strategy about that similar thing is severely lacking.
Mm-hmm. Also, like the wellness creator to MAGA pipeline is very, very brazen, and conservative funding knows that. And so
Mm,
they are actively funding creators to tap into those networks, you know?
yeah. Say more about that because I think it's very easy for people to be like, well, I want to be healthy, but
Mm-hmm.
like how does that tie into like me not being, a good person to like my fellow Americans or whatever? And I think we should explain that a
Well,
little bit more.
yeah, what I mean by that is that we see an increasing trend of people who call themselves wellness influencers. They usually spend a lot of time pushing vitamins and supplements, which is fine, or they focus on things like clean eating, natural remedies, or holistic health, and then they kind of start drifting into these far right or MAGA style political spaces. And it often starts with a distrust of mainstream institutions like Big Pharma or the government, which can then lead to them embracing and speaking on their channels about unresearched conspiracy theories or starting to work in quote unquote medical freedom rhetoric. And then this can grow into full scale posts around anti vax, around school policies, or suddenly that, yoga or essential oils, like an account like this is posting about government overreach and deep state plots. There was a post, for example, that went viral last year with 4 or 5 wellness influencers who had previously posted about kind of holistic health topics and then got together and collaborated on a post where they were essentially saying that birth control wasn't healthy for you because you shouldn't be quote unquote pumping your body with hormones. They took it a step further to talk about how iron supplements aren't healthy for women, even though a lot of women are anemic, especially during their menstrual cycles. And then it moved into anti-vax content. And so these women with huge followings in the wellness space who were popular for pushing natural remedies were now telling their massive audiences that things like scientifically proven to be safe contraception were unhealthy for the women who highly respect their platforms.
It's a huge problem. And until the left is able to do a similar thing, I feel like we're really going to be falling short of speaking to the newer generations about these topics.
Yeah. I feel like so one of the biggest things that I took away from that conference that I think we had chatted about this, so I think you agree, is that like we need a much better funded, better coordinated, progressive creator circle,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. There needs to be like a true come to Jesus moment for the left and the Democrats where they're saying, hey, who are the voices that we are uplifting? How are we doing that? How are we being intentional about it? And how are we being strategic about it? Because if we don't, we are about to fail to the already well funded, already well resourced, already well strategized right that is kind of completely dominating and taking over digital media.
So do you think they will listen?
I really hope so, but the party brain is right now holding out judgment.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have one more year till the midterms and 3 more years, well, probably two until presidential
My current
campaigns
fear,
begin again.
my current fear is that the left is going to do well in the midterms, but not as a result of anything the left has been doing,
Mm-hmm.
directly as a result of what the right has been doing. Like people are going to be struggling so much as a result of this administration's policies, as a result of the way things are going with immigration and jobs and the federal workforce and like all of these agencies being slashed and completely gutted, right? I think that because of that, the Democrats are going to do well in the midterms and they are going to once again reassume their false sense of security that they are so used to falling back on.
Mm-hmm. And they're going
And
to
they will
relax and they're not going to really push hard for like a really powerful campaign for 2028.
precisely, when in truth, we are actually already decades behind the
Mm-hmm.
right in terms of creating a digital media sphere that can actually combat the serious, not just misinformation and disinformation, but just lies that are being
Mm-hmm.
perpetuated on the right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unless we are able to do that, and unless there is massive, massive investment in the right kind of voices, like uplift the Black and Brown women, uplift the Latino voices, uplift the people that need to be uplifted. And if you are so concerned about, that men are not being seen in this party because that's what they said during post-election analysis, then also create spaces for them. Like make sure that we are actually speaking to the masses in the way that they should be spoken to and want to be spoken to because they are all online and we are just not reaching them. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Women in America. Public opinion is increasingly being shaped online. Combating the lies and propaganda of the right will require significant and intentional investment from the left into progressive creators and social media platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your network, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For additional resources, follow us on social media at Gemma_talks. See you next week.